Bickley and Marotta Mornings. Arizona Sports, the local sports leader. Bickley Blast.
If you're a basketball fan, you have already heard the Houston Rockets are baiting a hook to land a very big fish. His name is Kevin Durant. You might have heard of him. And you've already heard the Suns and Matt Ishbia have no plans to break up their big three, that they want to run it back at least one more time. But there's a different way of looking at this story, and that is this. Namely, the Rockets aren't necessarily trying to entice the Suns to effectively recoup a bunch of their old draft picks. They are trying to entice Durant to expedite the matter, to request a trade to Houston, especially if the Suns are not willing to add that extra year and $60 million to his contract this summer. Because the Rockets know Durant isn't afraid to move on. They know his legacy has become an obsessive national talking point, and they know he's got a history of wanderlust. Either way, these rumors have become a huge talking point on the national hot take shows this morning, and that cannot help the blood pressure or anxiety levels on Planet Orange, especially if these rumors persist into the regular season. But personally, I'm more worried the Rockets are gearing up to steal a different fish if things go horribly wrong in the upcoming season. His name is Devin Booker, and that's the player you trade only when all hope is lost. All right, today's Bickley Blast brought to you by my great friends at Chapman BMW, who make luxury attainable. Find them online at chapmanbmw.com.
Basically, what they acquired was the picks that Brooklyn received in the Durant trade, which was, Phoenix's pick. Whether they have Houston has the right to swap in 2025. With that, they could potentially have a pretty high pick if Phoenix is not a good team. There's an unprotected first from Phoenix in 2027, and then they have I believe the more favorable first in 2029, which is either Phoenix or Dallas. That was from the Kyrie Irving trade. So you have three valuable trade assets. If Devin Booker or Kevin Durant ever became available, are they available right now? No, they're not.
That's Bobby Marks from ESPN breaking it down on what Houston is angling to do and what they did do in that trade. Basically acquiring the draft picks the Suns sent to Brooklyn in the Kevin Durant trade. Now they belong to Houston, and they want to involve Kevin Durant again. There's been bubbling rumors all week long about the Rockets trying to make this big splash. Yep. They're ready to win now. They want to do it with Kevin Durant. Brian Windhorst added this on ESPN.
To my knowledge, Kevin Durant has not asked for a trade. However, there are definite connections between Kevin Durant and the Houston Rockets. They've got Ime Udoka as their head coach. Durant had a relationship with him when he was in Brooklyn and Udoka was an assistant. Royal Ivey is on Udoka's staff. Royal Ivey is one of the closest players to Durant in the NBA.
I wouldn't necessarily call it connecting of dots, but there is some background there. Kevin Durant, a little familiarity. And it all depends. This is all, again, like you said, hinging on what Kevin Durant wants.
Yeah, that's what I think that people just have to realize, that this might just all be just more steady rumor mill garbage.
Yes.
It's a little disconcerting to see the hot take shows debating, should the Suns trade Durant or Booker? And now you're seeing Booker's name in this context. It's not an easy thing to look at. You've heard Gamble report the Suns are not interested in all of this. You've heard Matt Ishbia say it in press conferences. But the tipping point in this could be if KD has an epiphany and says, you know what? Yeah, I kind of would rather pick up my career there. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what Houston's doing here. And I think this idea of adding that window, that year of contract to Kevin Durant's deal, that was pointed out by Brian Windhorst a couple months ago, and he said right then and there that this could be a turning point for the relationship. That it could be an artificial sticking point, that all of a sudden, oh, you don't want me? And then boom.
Yeah.
And again, I'm just saying what has been reported. I'm not saying I believe it.
But
or even want it.
Let's dive a little deeper on that. Brian Windhorst says, to my knowledge, Kevin Durant hasn't asked for a trade. Mm-hmm. We haven't heard that reported by anybody.
Nope.
But there's a difference, quite honestly, in today's NBA, especially with players like Kevin Durant, between asking for a trade and determining whether or not a player is happy. And I think there is some question on whether or not Kevin Durant is happy. And I'm not pinning that on Kevin Durant. Last year went sideways, team-wide.
Yeah.
There was the report you mentioned earlier in the show, going back to Christmas Day, Adrian Wojnarowski saying that Kevin Durant wasn't all copacetic with everything that was going on. Now, does that change? The disappointment remains the same, a first-round sweep at the hands of the Timberwolves, but they made a change at the coaching position. The Suns should not be interested in listening to any offers, anybody sniffing around Kevin Durant right now. See how this goes with Mike Budenholzer, this new staff. See what you can do tonight and tomorrow possibly in adding talent, whether it's through draft picks or through trades. See how free agency goes, and then see how the first couple months of the season go. I think we'll be able to tell pretty quickly. The Suns all last year were like, we're just coming together. They will not have that excuse this year. This is going to be largely the same group, especially the same core. You will be able to gauge very quickly on what the season is going to look like next year for the Suns. And if it's not going well, then maybe you go down that road.
Yeah, it's not a bad strategy, Vinny. It's not a bad strategy to have looking for this thing. Would there be any trade that the Rockets could do right now that would make sense for the Suns in the short term? Forget the draft picks. We know that gives you the illusion of a future. If I forget who pointed out that if the Rockets end up drafting a big man, it might indicate that they would trade Alperen Şengün, who's a very interesting, different kind of player. If you could package him in, like, I don't know, Fred VanVleet and maybe Dylan Brooks and
then do the Suns trade Nurkic then?
I don't know.
Another separate deal?
Is there any way that this makes sense to keep the Suns in a competitive lane for a championship next year? Or if you take the Kevin Durant piece out, are you basically saying there's no way you're going to get close?
See, that's where it gets cloudy for me, because the Suns have not been close to a championship with Kevin Durant. When they were most recently challenging for a championship, Devin Booker was the centerpiece of that team, along with Chris Paul. So I don't want to say, oh, you get rid of Durant, you're throwing your hands up and giving up on your championship pursuits, because how could you say that with a straight face? I mean, Kevin Durant's a phenomenal basketball player.
Yes, and he's coming off of a phenomenal season. But again, that's part of why this whole thing of maybe the Rockets will just trade for him next year. That doesn't make any sense to me, because time is ticking with Kevin Durant.
It is.
And if you're going to do that, you're going to do that now. I guess you're going to find out what their intentions truly are if they're rebuffed for Kevin Durant and then just go use these assets for something else right here and now.
I don't know what that would be.
I don't either.
Paul George, Donovan Mitchell.
Well, and the Paul George thing is interesting because the Clippers don't want to pay him a max. They don't want to give him another contract.
Yeah.
He's got a very, very expensive player option. He can opt back into it, but he wants a new deal. And I don't know where he's going to get that from.
And then you have to consider in L.A., too, what they're maneuvering. I mean, they're opening up a brand new arena that's supposed to be the ultimate arena in L.A. I think they want to have a championship caliber team behind it.
To go along with all those toilets? Yeah.
And urinals.
Exactly.
And
right.
urinals.
Exactly.
Thanks for watching Bickley and Marotta. Click to see the latest Bickley Blast and hit the button in the middle to subscribe to Arizona Sports.